welcome to the first edition of 1 Minute News from 1 Minute Economics. This is my newest format and also my most flexible one. I think everything is going to be pretty straightforward, and that whenever I think that I have something relevant to share, from an economics perspective, of course, related to a current event, I'm going to be publishing videos like this one, and we'll be covering each event in about a minute or so each. I have my hourglass here by my side, and this is pretty much how it's going to work. I've decided to do this because on the internet in general, and YouTube in particular, there seems to be a growing demand for content that helps people figure out what's going on in the world around them. Like, for example, I really love the Vlog Brothers YouTube channel. I love what Hank Green and John Green are doing. And a year and a half or so ago, maybe 2 years, Hank asked the community what they think that the Vlog Brothers should spend time on. And the second answer was current events and explaining current events. Now, the Vlog Brothers community, they're also called the Nerd Fighters. It's a huge community with people from all sorts of backgrounds, with all sorts of interests and so on. And when in a community like this one, you see such a desire to learn more about current events, I believe it's a clear signal that people are getting more and more worried. Here on 1 Minute Economics, in our smaller community, the same principle is valid. And more people are asking me, what I think about something that Trump recently did, or what my opinion is about another recent current event. And it's clear that people are thirsty for this type of content. And let's be honest, at least for my generation, for young people in general, we live in ridiculously turbulent times. Now, obviously, our great-grandparents have seen much worse, but for our generation, it's a pretty big deal to see everything that's going on around us. And with that stated, I'm going to move on to the 3 pieces of news which have me personally worried. And I'm going to start with the referendum in Turkey. I think it would be a mistake to just say that, like in Star Wars, Turkey is just a country far, far away and you shouldn't care. No, you should care, because Turkey is a top 20 country in terms of GDP, and it's one of the top 5 NATO members, according to most statistics, in terms of military strength. So I believe that everyone should pay attention to what's happening in Turkey, and unfortunately, in the recent referendum, 51.4% of the people who voted have stated that they're willing to let the president expand his powers. Now, of course, there are controversies surrounding the vote. Some people say that all sorts of fraud took place, and I'm pretty sure it probably did. But there's no denying the fact that lots and lots of people are supporting this president. And, the referendum itself, taken in isolation and in a different context, wouldn't have worried me that much. But as an economist, I've noticed time and time again that whenever, economically speaking, things are turbulent, people tend to gravitate towards quote-unquote powerful leaders, providential leaders who are going to save the world. And these same people are willing to tolerate abusive behavior, dictatorial tendencies, and so on and so forth. So if you see Turkey as just a piece of a bigger international puzzle, it's easy to understand why I'm worried. Which leads me to the second piece of news for today, which is the fact that on the 8th of June, there are going to be snap elections in the United Kingdom. Now, again, taken in isolation, this wouldn't have bothered me that much, We can simply call it a political play by Theresa May to secure a powerful position in the Brexit negotiations and so on. Sure, we can debate the politics of it all day. However, as an economist, what worries me is seeing the fact that everywhere in the world, isolationist tendencies are becoming more and more common. And throughout history, I'm sorry, but whenever something like this happened, the results were not pretty. Now, again, we can debate the politics of it all. I'm sure there are valid arguments both in favor and against various policies, but the fact remains that throughout history, whenever people exhibited isolationist behavior, disaster tends to follow. And again, this is what worries me. And the United Kingdom is, it's one of the top 5 countries in the world in terms of GDP. It's the second military power of NATO. The UK is definitely a big deal, and anything troublesome that's happening over there is going to affect you regardless of where you live. And with that, I'm going to end this section again, and I'm going to focus on the final piece of news for today, which is the fact that tensions with North Korea are growing. Now, over the years, there have been countless stories about how North Korea sometimes flexes its muscles and so on. Once again, in and of itself, it's not that worrisome. But when taken in this particularly tricky international context, I'm sorry, but something like what's happening now between North Korea and everyone else, it's worrisome. Not because North Korea is an economic superpower, of course it's not. In terms of GDP, in terms of economic strength, North Korea is nothing. It does, however, have nuclear weapons, and I'm sorry, but again, in this environment, I am deeply worried. Markets in general, economists like myself, we tend to like stability. We tend to like predictability. And our current environment is anything but predictable. And under such circumstances, economists like myself are not worried, but very worried whenever there are tensions among countries that have nuclear weapons, on top of everything else that's happening all around the world. And on that note, I believe I can go ahead and end today's video, but not before saying that, again, these 3 events, taken separately and analyzed in perhaps a different context, they wouldn't have been all that doom and gloomy, but taken together, they make me very, very concerned. And it's precisely developments like these which make the average individual become more and more interested in content like the video I'm publishing right now, through which people explain or try to explain what's going on in the world around them. With that stated, I'd like to thank you very much for tuning into the first edition of 1 Minute News from 1 Minute Economics. Again, I'm going to be doing this whenever I have events worth sharing. If it's a quiet week, I might not publish these videos at all, or of course, if it's a busy week in terms of current events, I don't mind publishing several of them. So we're going to see what happens. This format is just going to be me commenting, sharing my opinion from an economic perspective about the various events that are unfolding around us. And we're just going to have to see what happens next. As usual, please, if you can, be active in the community, like my videos, comment, subscribe to 1 Minute Economics if you're not yet a subscriber. And of course, if you can, please head on over to 1minuteeconomics.com, where you can find detailed information on how you can support the channel financially as well. Thanks a lot, guys, and have a great day.